Hello everybody, welcome to the latest Joy of ZZT, Worlds of ZZT livestream. I already started struggling with my words there. This is our third episode, and tonight we're finally gonna open the floodgates and start doing some actual coding. So let's take a quick look at what we've done so far. We've got our extremely placeholder title screen, which at some point we're gonna go back to. Our little hub world. Our first purple key room with the killer robot factory in my case. A crashed meteorite to the south of the starting board, well, starting hub, which leads into a tube, which was our first dark board full of centipedes and not being able to shoot things, which pops you up into the restroom of the Martian Park, which loops back up to the other side of the meteorite path for our second purple key. Then we made a spot last week to actually start turning in these purple keys. Got to play around with the fade tool a little bit that KevEdit offers. And yeah, our little work in progress boards for messing with that. So I'm gonna jump right into things and not even worry about how board connections are working just yet. We do have just one path left that's we decide is going to be split here, but so I'm sure it'll connect to the right, but there'll be a passage. What I want to do, start doing some coding, is I want to start doing a lot of coding. I want to show off a bunch of stuff. The good news is ZZT-OOP is incredibly easy. It's the sort of thing that many children have picked up on over the years. We're going to do them all, because that's going to give us reason to make a lot of objects. I'm going to make mine, just take up the whole board. You can split yours among several boards or whatever you like. Let's see, our mall will be a nice dark purple. So a nice big border. I know I'm going to have a passage. For the time being, just do this. I'll point it to the hub just so it points to something. I'm going to start dividing this area up a bit. You make it very colorful if you wish. Hopefully by now, those of you who've been following along are kind of acclimated to KevEdit's controls. Debating exactly how I want to do my borders here for each store. I have no idea exactly how many stores we're going to have, but I was definitely spending plenty of time today considering some ideas for what to do here. So I know, for example, I'm going to leave this one a little bit open. I actually kind of like the thicker walls, but these ones down here are going to get a little crammed if I run with that the whole way. Purple. We've got a surprisingly active ZZT community here in the modern era. If you're just joining like for the first time here, yeah, this is KevEdit. It's an external editor. First came out in like 2000, I think. Maybe give or take a year. But it makes things a lot nicer. But we have a Discord with plenty of folks. And there's already, I think, 2 games released this year. And I'm hoping that this series will jumpstart that a little and we'll get a couple more out of it. So, okay. That's a mall, right? Empty, desolate. Probably a lot more active 20 years ago. So let's see here. For our first sort of objects, we're going to do something. We're going to do the easiest thing of all. Our mall needs a directory. So since I'm using white, we talked about in the previous weeks that there's that stat count there in the top right, the 1 out of 150 here. So we're going to use text to help keep that low so we have room for objects that we actually need code for. So I'm going to go to our character select, F4 to turn on text mode, Control A to bring up this nice little character selector so we can get our special characters more easily. Get some little corners here. Now, actually go back to plain white, F2 and O for objects. It's going to be a smiley. I'm going to hit enter. We'll start changing some things here. First we'll pick a better character. Go with this good old square. Now, we can adjust the cycle. ZZT runs things on cycles. Basically, a cycle of 3 means every 3 game ticks, it'll get a chance to execute. We could crank that down to 1, which will make it execute every time, and that's a pretty common thing to do. Honestly, like to the point where I kind of wish KevEdit had an option to make it default to cycle 1. But the default cycle in ZZT is 3. It's perfectly fine if you're doing things where that quick reaction doesn't really matter, if it's not like an enemy or something. Then we'll pick our program editor here, program, edit, and here we go. So, how does this work? We've done scrolls in the previous week, and as we've seen there, you just kind of type things, welcome to the mall. Difference is scrolls are kind of hard set, they don't run their code until you touch them, whereas objects will run their code instantly. So if we just do this, and we walk on this board, it's going to say, welcome to the mall. Not what we want to do. We want this to be something that the player gets to interact with and reads. So the very first thing we need to do is tell this object to stop running code, because otherwise it's just going to start from the top and run until something interrupts it. Every command in ZZT starts with do I want to call it a pound sign, a number sign, a hashtag? This symbol has many names anymore. But it starts with this guy, the tic-tac-toe board. And our very first command, end. And simply put, when the parser gets to this line of code, it will stop and won't do anything until something changes that. You can quit out quick and save there. You should definitely point out, if you hit H for KevEdit's help, it has a very good, actually, reference. This is not, yeah, it says here it thanks Kronos as well as Tim Sweeney. I believe this is the same as the unofficial updated help file, but this one is has quite a lot to it. It explains things pretty well, as well as all the weird little exceptions and things. In our case, program format, yeah. Everything has a symbol. Boy, this is a lot here. There's text, there's comments, there's hyperlinks, this whole bunch of junk. We'll get to that. And if we go back to our first object here, now we run to the next issue, which is it stopped running code. We need to do something to make it get to this code. In ZZT, this is done with labels, which are basically the sort of events. You can make custom ones, and we'll learn how to send messages to specific labels and that sort of thing. But there's a few hard-coded. I think KevEdit's help is good enough that if I just type a colon and hit F1, it'll jump. Nope. It won't. Let's see, where's our list of labels? There it is. So these are the sort of built-in ones. There's touch for when you touch something, shot for when an object gets shot, bomb for when it gets caught in an explosion, thud for when it hits a wall in a specific way, which we'll get to eventually, and energize, which I don't think I've ever used in my entire life, for when the player touches an energizer and becomes invincible. So ZZT-OOP, as this is called, OOP being object-oriented programming, because Tim Sweeney had to cash in on that hot new programming fad of 1991. Just touch. A nice thing with KevEdit too is it's got all this syntax highlighting. You can see our yellow pound sign, and our dark green here. All of this is color-coded. If we do a custom label like this, you can see it's a dark red instead, so you can even tell like if your label is reserved by ZZT or not. There's also plenty of text formatting options there on the sidebar. You can just hit Control-Y to erase a line. And also what we get over the original ZZT editor is we can highlight text and cut and copy and paste, and it makes things a lot nicer. In fact, even just hitting home and end keys, that is not something in ZZT's default editor. So just jumping, normally you'd have to like scroll all the way over to the beginning of a line. It's terrible. It's why I'm making everybody use KevEdit instead. Every time you see this accent, that's just me hitting my mic toggle button. I should really change that, but too bad. But you know what? Actually, that's all we technically need. This is an object. It does a thing. We'll put a period at the end of our sentence. Yeah, it has word wrap, which is a plus. And you can even adjust it with alt and plus and minus if you want extra short lines for some weird reason. Let's go ahead, quit out, save, switch over to our Zeta. Make sure our world's freshly loaded. And our very first objects. Welcome to the mall. Incredible. Go back into Zeta, but that's not particularly helpful. So we can do a nice little mall directory. We've seen this $ character with scrolls, and it's going to do the same thing here. That'll make the text appear in white and centered. So it's good for headings or titles, that sort of thing. Common convention, actually, a lot of ZZT games do, if they have dialogue between two characters, oftentimes they'll have one character type into regular text, and usually the player they'll give the white text to, so you can tell who's talking without specifying names. Let's see here. How many stores we got? 3 up top, 4 on the bottom. So we're going to say, I'm going to make this fancy. Pick some special looking characters here. Copy and paste this. Okay. 7 buildings. I had a handful of ideas in advance, so for once, instead of sitting here dumbfounded for everything, I'm going to at least have a couple ideas in mind. We're going to have a food court. We're going to have a scrap shop. We're going to have ZZT. We have yeah, I don't have all of these occupied. We're definitely going to have a hot topic. We have a hot topic. We're going to have an ammo shop, the Raymond's ray guns. We're going to have something that's going to be for health. I'm going to have an arcade, which I'd love to give a cooler name. We'll think of that over time. I got one more blank for now. I'll leave that empty and see where things go. So let's actually pop open the list of commands by jumping to commands. This ZZT-OOP is surprisingly lacking in commands. We can fit almost all of them on one screen here. Become, bind, change, character, clear, cycle, die, end game, give, go, idle, if, lock, play. Put, restart, restore, send, set, shoot, take, throw star, try, unlock, walk, and zap. That's it. I think it's like 27? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 27 commands. That's not a ton. And a lot of them kind of go in pairs, like lock and unlock, obviously, set and clear, so we get to them. So let's start coming up with some ideas here. What do we want to learn about? We've already seen end. Got cycle. Let's actually learn how to make. Now these are just commands. There's also, well, we've seen go on this list. Let's do that. Let's learn about movement. And the easiest way to do something like that. Actually, let me flip back to our park. Okay, so I used a normal watercolor for water. We're gonna have a little fountain here with some fish moving around in it. These buildings are a little bit taller than I want them to be, so actually I'm gonna shrink them down just a little. Space is at a premium here. Cut and paste, shrink things. Okay. Now let's try something like this. Okay, so now we're going to have a fountain here. I'm going to use dark blue on dark blue, because that's going to be our water that our fish are going to be swimming around in. So we'll go F3 for terrains and A for a fake wall. Put that in our buffer. F to fill the area. So now we got this little pond. We'll pick an object with a matching background color. Change its character. And here we go. Alpha, the universal ZZT fish character. So this one's starting at cycle 3, and you can adjust your cycles in advance, like I did with my mall directory there, like this. You can actually play around with cycles a bit. It'll start at cycle 3 by default. We're going to actually slow it down and see what cycle 5 looks like. So, unsurprisingly, the cycle command sets the cycle. So it'll take a little longer before this fish starts moving around. And for movement, simply enough, go, and then a direction. Now, ZZT is nice. It offers stupid ways and smarter ways to do that. You can type go north, go east, go south, go west. That's fine, but that's a lot of typing. can also instead just type go N, go E, go S, go W. That's better. That's still a lot to move. We're going to get rid of all of that, all these goes. And ZZT has a shortcut basically for the go command, which is just the slash character. We can just do /n, /s, or I'm sorry, east, south, west. So that'll make it move in a nice little circle. Still 4 lines, but unlike with commands, slash is special and you can combine them like this. So 1 line, 4 movements, and ZZT will handle that just fine. So let's see what that looks like. Let's see. Beautiful. So it swims around, but then it stops because it's gonna hit the end of its program and just have nothing else to do. So instead, you might want to make it run indefinitely, and the easiest way to do that is with the restart command, which restarts. And what that will do is simply, wherever ZZT is, wherever this object is in its code, once it hits restart, it just jumps to the very beginning. Another thing we might like to do is have a bunch of fish, and we can just, copy the object, have a million fish. You can have a lot of fish. That's the maximum number of fish allowed on a board. And if we hit the I key to open up the board information, we're going to see our board is now 9 whole kilobytes out of about 20. And if we go back, let's just take a look. Our killer robot board, that's pretty packed. There's a lot going on there. That's only 4 kilobytes. And all we have are a bunch of fish. So ZZT offers an extremely powerful and also not quite what you think it might actually be command to copy. Not actually copy, but to reference another object's code. So I'm going to erase all these other fish. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change color. We'll make this fish look different. Same thing here. And our next command here is the extremely powerful and useful bind command, which actually I just realized we can't use just yet. We gotta go back to our fish. Our fish has code, but it doesn't have a name. And to give an object in ZZT a name, we just use the @ symbol and then name it. Fish. So now we can send messages to objects named fish, we can bind to an object named fish, that sort of thing. It has to be the very first line. You can't name an object in the middle. That won't work. I'm not sure offhand if it just displays it as text or if it just gets ignored. I think it's the latter, but long story short, first line, gotta be an object name. If an object doesn't need to be referenced by anything else, you can get away with not giving an object a name. I pretty much always just name things just to get in the habit. Worst comes to worst, you can erase it later if you're running out of board space. So we got our fish, we got our cycle here, northeast, southwest, restart. So it's named fish, and this next one, this one can simply just be bind fish. And then its code will actually, it won't copy it. It will be pointing a reference to this code. And that distinction really can come into play if you're doing things like enemies, because if you make an enemy that takes like 3 shots to be destroyed, that tends to get shared between the two. It's kind of a mess. But the way bind works is a bit more efficient. So another thing, we can actually change the character So this portion here, all this weird stuff, is not shared with bind. So you can have things running at different characters, different locked stats when we get to locks. We can have them running at different cycles. So I could just do cycle 10, and this one would run its code, the fish code, much more slowly, except we did put a cycle command in here, so it's just going to be set to 5 anyway. KevEdit for convenience, letting you set the cycle in advance. And also, even if you scroll down to the advanced stuff, this will be the first time we're ever going to use it. Let's actually make one more fish. This pond is getting a little crowded, but we can actually hit bind to, and we can bind the object in advance. So we don't even need to write code here. This last fish will, let's see, pick a character for it. So without even writing any code, this one's gonna just start moving around. Nothing needs to be done. So let's take a quick test, see what this all looks like in action. Switch over to Zeta. So now we see 2 of our fish are moving, but 1 is not. And I kind of didn't intend to do this, but it's a great way to demonstrate something with how objects move. Which is, if you tell an object to go north, it's going to go north. And it won't do anything else until it does go north. So if we actually use our cheats here, and zap, erase some walls, now it'll start moving because it's not actually blocked. And there's ways to handle that to not make things get stuck against walls, thank goodness. We got our fish. Kind of weirdly synchronized swimming. Also kind of slow. Let's actually make these some much faster fish. So we'll change that to cycle 1, speed them all up. Even though these guys are cycle 3 and cycle 10, eventually they'll get a turn to execute. And then they'll hit that cycle 1 command and start moving a lot faster. Anyways, I hope you like that this live stream is going to be an hour and a half of programming fish. But well, first let's work on fixing that whole walking into walls thing. Good news is we could do go. That's going to run into walls and just hang. Same with the slash, which is our shortcut. Our command for attempting to move in a direction, we're going to try north, east, south, west. And this way, if the object is blocked, it won't care. It'll just move on to the next line. So let's see, what does that look like? These fish are going to be really close together, so it might actually... Yeah, look at that. That's a bit... They're very fast now, but they're moving a bit more interestingly. And just like go has slash, try has a shortcut as well, which is just a question mark. And same as before, you can stack all those directions on a single line, and you don't have to worry about it. It's not quite as one-to-one as go north and slash north, because try does actually offer the ability to handle what to do if it can't. So you can say try north, fail. And if it can't go to the north, we'll have to end our code with an end here, because we don't want it to keep... Oh, did I get rid of my restart? I did. There was a restart. So technically this end isn't actually needed, but we can do our own custom label called fail. Oh no, I'm blocked. So this way, if the object tries to go north and it's unable to do so, it will instead jump to here. And you can't do that when you're using question mark. That's just movement and nothing else. There's no sort of fail label. It doesn't have to be called fail, of course. You can put whatever you want. Locked fish. You do not want spaces in your label names. You don't want special characters. Honestly, even just plain numbers can get weird in some edge cases. You're probably best off just sticking with one word. Not necessarily one word, but just one word. No spaces, that sort of thing. We're not gonna... Butterfish aren't gonna yell about being blocked, because they're not gonna keep moving in just a circle. That's not very good. We open up our help file and go down to the directions. You can see it's a lot more complex, not complex, but there's a lot more variety than just specifying specific directions. So there's north, south, east, west. There's idle, which we haven't seen, which will just make it not move in a direction and just wait. That's your generic sort of action. But you can see seek to move towards the player, which weirdly enough gets reversed if the player is energized. I'm glad that the help file actually brings that up because I definitely would have forgotten to. Flow, which is the direction the object is walking, which we'll get to the walk command later. And then there's some odd choices for random movement. RND and S, which will move randomly north or south. Like, okay, that makes sense. RND and E, randomly north or east. You're just playing RND for move randomly, except, weirdly enough, go random is actually biased. It will more likely move east or west rather than north and south. And the reason for that is simply because boards are wider than they are tall, and that kind of evens things out. Fortunately, there actually is an alternative that is unbiased. One of the strange things, actually, is that go random isn't documented in the original help file. So a lot of early games use the other method, which is even weirder. You can modify these directions, so clockwise with CW or counterclockwise with CCW, which, let's pop open a test object that I swear is not a fish. If you do something like go random NS, no, I'm sorry, RNDP space RND NS, that's valid. That's a line of code. That's gonna pick a random direction, either north or south, and then move in a random direction perpendicular to that. Why this isn't a valid command, I will never know. You would have to do that if you want to move randomly to the east or west. I swear, it's optimized, just not for you. It's optimized for running on a computer in 1991, I suppose. Fewer commands in memory, that sort of thing. Kind of a mess. Go back. What else we got in there? Seen random, seen clockwise, and you can stack these things. Op for opposite. Oh, here we go. Some convenient examples. Go clockwise, random or south. We'll go east or west. Oh, actually, my example was even worse, but still valid. My RNDP, RNDNS. Do this instead. that's much more sensible to look at, even if it's still very silly compared to just there being a random east-west option. Go op-seek to move away from the player. Walk clockwise flow, which will make it walk clockwise from its current walking direction. And I guess that's all they give us. But more stupid valid commands. That's valid. Kind of a mess. Not going to need to do that ever, but you can stack all these as much as you like. Let's get rid of that. So let's make these fish move a little bit more randomly instead. And slow them down, because they're way too fast. Ironically, I think cycle 3 is going to be a good cycle for them. And all those examples use go, but you can still do this with slash. So we're going to tell them to go random, perpendicular, and east. So that says move in a random direction and restart. It'll keep on looping. And you could optimize this code more. You can actually erase the name and pre-bind those other fish and set the cycle in KevEdit and get rid of these lines. Technically speaking, you can shorten restart. We'll get to that when we start doing labels. And we don't need the end because, for one thing, it's going to hit restart and jump to the beginning, but you don't need an end at the very end. Once it hits the end of the program, it's just going to end. So you can at least get rid of that one nicely. So now the fish will just go on swimming, however they please. Whether or not that's an improvement is tough to say. But now they at least move around, it's a bit more doing their own thing. Let's get away from these fish. We have spent way more time on fish than I thought we were going to. Let's see. Enough of the fish. Let's do stuff in mind. Actually, let's start programming some doors for some of these shops. Like, clear a couple of spots for entrances. And actually, what I would like to do is I did do deliberately with my little directory here, is since this is theoretically a place that the player is going to be returning to buy health and ammo, I put those stores closest here. Oop, thank you, I did not bring KevEdit up. Simply put, I just erased some spots for doors, and I made my ammo and health stores closest to the player so they don't have to go on a long walk whenever they do come back in here. And coincidentally, I ended up using cyan for the ammo store, which is its default color, and it's red for health, which is usually the color that gets associated with it because people like to do hearts. So let's start with doors here. Unsurprisingly, brown gets used a lot for these. And we'll start off here with our door. Pick a good door character. Now, these ones are kind of popular, just the sort of squares with circles. I mean, they match the default ZZT doors that you use keys for. But in my case, because I want to show off how to change characters, we're going to make a nice animated door. This is probably the most frequently made ZZT object ever. So many games use these, and there's, I believe, ZZT-AE, which was a different external editor that's not so hot to use these days since it's DOS-based for one, actually came with the ability to just make them automatically. We're going to do it from scratch. I'm going to make these doors quick. We'll set them in advance to cycle 1. Start editing our code. Name it door. Door, first thing we want to do is nothing, so I want to say end. And like our mall directory, we want to respond when the player opens it by touching it. So we do our touch label. So we'll move our player here for testing purposes. Easiest thing in the world to do is just hard code some movement for it. It goes north, it goes west, it goes east, it goes south. We'll move to Zeta, see what that looks like. And for one thing, it's obviously way too fast, and also this. if you keep touching the door while it's in the middle of its code, it's going to jump back to that touch label. So a lot of ZZT doors are also very breakable like this, or if you just hold down that button, they're just going to keep on starting their code again. So we do need to slow this down a little bit. It's okay if it opens fast, but we want to have the player get some time to move. So we're going to do some idles. Actually, let's do this the fun way. We can idle with /i. We can idle with a go-i. And, you know, it's really funny that I'm talking about ZZT, I guess, attempting to save memory and not have random NE and commands like that, because there's also a legit just idle command, which is the same thing as these other two lines. I have no idea why. And that should solve one of our problems. Yeah. Oh, actually, why didn't it close? Is idle? No, idle is definitely listed there. Oh, there we go. If you actually write out the full command and hit F1, it'll jump right to it. I'm actually very fascinated if idle is not actually a valid command. Let's get rid of that and double check. I don't think anybody has ever written out idle like that. Okay, it's getting hung up on something else. Oh! Okay. Man, I'm not making a good case for ZZT-OOP here. So it's getting caught on go idle. So actually, you know, I said number try and question mark try with directions. I'm sorry, just plain question mark. Pounds, commands. I'm going to say commands because that's what that means. Command try. I said that these are identical, with the only difference being a fail label. And I said that these were identical, but actually, that's technically wrong. I wasn't even thinking. So when we say go idle, it's trying to move idly. Long story short, it's being blocked by itself. So it just hangs. And I guess /i does not do that. This is why nobody ever uses go, and nobody ever uses plain idle. That is weird. There's a lot of weird things like this with ZZT-OOP. And if you're not sure of what the heck's going on, it can get a little annoying. So actually, this one should work. Let's just double check that idle is indeed an actual command and not a horrible lie that we've been told. That worked, but I definitely have something else screwy. Doors are tough. Oh, right, because I was demonstrating try again here. Northwest, east, south. And we're not going to do these weird 30 variants. And we can honestly make this all one line if we wanted to, but there's actually going to be good reason to split it up even further to this. Let's do that to make it stop. Okay. So we still have the issue though, where if you touch the door as it's going through these commands, it's going to jump back to the beginning and you'll just rip the door off the hinges and go flying north. So what we want to do is introduce the lock command and, unsurprisingly, the unlock command. And what this will do is lock an object, which means that it will not receive any external events. It'll just run through all its code, and it doesn't matter if you touch the door, doesn't matter if you shoot the door, doesn't matter if an object tells the door to do something, it's just going to completely ignore it until it's told to unlock. So now we should have a simple door that opens and doesn't break horribly. There we go. That's a door. Cannot break the door. Trying to touch the door, but it doesn't do anything else once in the process of opening. Still very short timing, but we can adjust the idles there. So actually another thing we didn't discuss is how long is a cycle? It is roughly cycle 1, which is going to be every single tick, is roughly 1/10 of a second. It's technically a little bit faster, but generally speaking, that's the rough math, and you're probably not going to want to like idle for more than like a second or so anyway. So we've got some. So we're going to be idle for half a second approximately before it starts to close. So we can do that. But what we wanted to make our doors for in the first place is to show off how to animate things. That is the char for character command, which is simple enough. So now instead, our door will move to the north, and then it expects a number here, which is going to be from 0 to 255. And in the old days before KevEdit, you just had to learn. You'll see a lot of times the Worlds of ZZT Twitter bot will post like ASCII character chart boards, which people would use for references. It is 100% the Charmander command, but KevEdit is merciful, and if we do the Control-A thing here, unlike in regular text mode, if we pick a character on this part, which will be / for a door in the process of being opened, it will convert it. This is good. So I'm going to move north, and move west. Actually, I forgot to write char, so in this case it's just going to show the character. Yeah, don't want that. Also conveniently though, KevEdit remembers the last special character you used, so it's already on there for me. We want to go back to 47, and then go back to our starting character. What's this? So now we have a door. Much better. It's so realistic. You can hardly tell that this is a text mode game. As long as we're making the greatest door this world has ever seen, let's introduce some sound effects. ZZT has a play command. And if we pop open that play command, we're going to learn how to make PC speaker music. Is it smoother? It probably is smoother if you change the character and then move. But you can play around. Music. We've heard plenty of ZZT music and sound effects by now. I am not a musician whatsoever. I don't know how to make ZZT sound good. That is well beyond my abilities. You can read this and learn how to make notes of different durations and pseudo chords with this triplets, time and a half, and changing octaves and rests and piano notes, sharp and flat. You can add more cowbell and wood blocks. You can see that 3 here is reserved because it's that weird triplet command up here. It's a lot, but the good news is that for totally simplistic sound effects, you can kind of fudge your way around. A surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly since how many ZZT games were made by teenagers, common way to just write some sound effects is to just type a word. Now, we can see what does butt sound like. go back into Zeta. That might not be the greatest door sound effect, but I mean, that's a sound. In this case, it's literally just the note B, but literally but, apparently. If you use, so basically B is the note B. U isn't used, so ZZT I believe just treats it as a rest. T says that hey, the next note's going to be a 30-second note, and same as again, we don't have any more notes, so that's the same as this. We also get the sort of sound effects. If we go up top, let's try 8. I don't know what that sounds like. That's a door sound. Now, I'm tabbing back and forth between KevEdit and Zeta, and actually, if you're paying close attention to the right sidebar here, you can see Control-T for test music. And it's a mixed bag. I'll hit Control-T from the very top here. God, can you even hear that? You can barely hear that. Let me just go back to some notes. That's a bit better. But KevEdit's music is not very accurate to what it actually sounds like in ZZT. It's okay for something like this, where you're just tossing together a sound effect. You're definitely always going to want to make sure it sounds good in ZZT itself, though. It also just goes through with reckless abandon here. So if we put this command here, and start from the top, it's just going to go from the cursor all the way through. It's not going to care about any other commands. It's not going to care about the fact that this code is unreachable. You can hear that half note. Music, actual songs, you gotta also, there's a music buffer. You have to add a bunch of like idle commands to let the buffer sort of drain out before you add more music to it. It's beyond me. That's all I'm gonna say on music. I'm just gonna go say that, and then I guess here. What's this sound like? Does that sound good? Let's see. There we go. That's a door. That is the perfect door. Makes noise when it opens, makes noise when it closes. You can't break it. That's... So actually, yeah, let's go back. I think I used 2 and 8? 8 and 2. So I used 8 and 2, which are ZZT's little drum sound effects. All the numbers are some kind of percussion. We pop open the help here. So I used a cowbell and a low wood block. It's actually, yeah, as long as we're... Let's do a quick little music test here. Stop our code, wait until we touch an object. You can tell I don't write ZZT music because I don't recall if the sharp and flat goes after or before. That way we'll definitely get stuff like that. After, okay. So C sharp, C flat. So this will be our little music test. The pluses and minus will adjust the octave, so higher pitched and lower pitched. The T here, these are going to be 32nd notes, and then some 16th notes. And then, see, Snorp here is saving me. This one is flat, this one is sharp. Let's see what it all sounds like. Actually, let's start with what it actually sounds like in ZZT. And I say actually, but the way PC speakers are with computers and the way ZZT generates sound, it's processor dependent and all sorts of garbage, and it's going to sound incredibly different depending on what you're running things on. So don't worry too much. Let's listen. I'm not a composer. Let's listen to that again in KevEdit, and keep in mind that it's just going to skip over this big pause here. Like you can tell those are not the same. But it's a rough guide. It'll get you going. Let's get rid of our music. We've got the perfect door. So just like before, we can get rid of all this. Bind door. We don't have to worry about weird bind behavior. This will work for all these doors down here. I never even add a spot for this one here. Now we have to do a door that opens in the opposite direction. Well, I mean, technically, we could just use the same door and this one will open inward. Let's just do that because it's been almost an hour and we've made fish and doors. Actually, these ones have the full code. Don't need that. Bind door. Bind door. And again, you can just bind them directly with KevEdit here. Alright. So now we're getting somewhere here. Let's see, what other commands should we learn about? Learn about movement. So, I don't want any violence in my mall. Yeah, we're gonna make some shops. I'm gonna set my shot limit to 0 though, because I don't want the player shooting everything. Now, objects won't do anything when shot unless you tell them to, so that doesn't matter. And actually, another thing worth pointing out real quick about how they work. We've seen lions. We've got an object here. The player stands here, they can shoot the lion. If the player stands here, they can't shoot the objects. The bullet has to actually appear. So they'd have to shoot here. Bullet would appear here. That's a bear. That's a bullet. Bullet would have to appear here, and then the bullet hits the object. You can't shoot at point blank range. It's just the way it is. But there are definitely games where enemies will kind of pin you and you'll get trapped in a corner by objects and just be unable to shoot them. So it's something to watch out for. Anyway, let's make a shop. Like I said, this one here is going to be Raymond's Ray Guns. And there's going to be ammo for sale. Let's do something vertical. Again, I want to keep my object count low. So for my counters, I mean, you could just use solid walls or whatever you like. I'm going to open the terrain menu, and towards the very end of the list are H and V. These are vertical. These are the walls that the rays that blink walls fire. We go back, way back to when we first started, we had our killer robot board. If you remember the beams that these things shot, that's what those make. If there's no blink wall attached though, they're never going to get erased, so they're basically just another wall. So we'll make a little shopkeeper behind the counter. He'll be a Martian. This is Raymond. Everybody say hi to Raymond. Everybody loves him. And we'll indicate without even using the directory that, hey, you can get ammo here. What color? Yellow. We used yellow at the beginning, so let's stick with that. And let's make some decorative ray guns. Conveniently, you got these suckers here, which make for pretty good gun characters. There we go. That's a gun shop. So now, of course, player can't get to this side and talk with Raymond directly. They got to go through the counter. So we're going to clear a spot here. Put an object there. Oh, actually, I don't know why I'm using white. White is what you want to use if you're using text, but if you're using these ray characters, they can be whatever color you like. So you can do a more traditional wooden countertop like this with some brown. We'll do a brown object. That matches. There you go. Now you want to make it obvious, which is why I have Raymond standing here, which would imply to the player that, hey, they gotta talk from this one. You can, of course, just make every single one of these an object. You can bind the code. And then you can actually, yeah, let's do that. Let's make Raymond pace around. Oh, you know what? Yeah. Let's learn how the walk command works, because we've seen the other forms of movement, but we have not seen walk, and we haven't seen that weird flow thing and all that stuff. So Raymond here is going to walk north. And that basically tells the object to just move north forever. It will keep executing code, so you can have it walk north while shooting in a direction or doing whatever else, which is one advantage. But you only need to say walk north once, and it's going to walk until it can't. And eventually it's going to hit a wall. In our case, pretty quickly. Let's see. And in that case, it will jump to the thud label. So we're going to end here. So Raymond will walk north. His code execution will stop, but he will keep on walking until he thuds into a wall. Now walk doesn't have a shortcut like slash and question mark. You just gotta type it every time, but the whole moving in one direction forever kinda makes it worth it. So we're gonna instead say walk opposite of flow. So whenever an object walks, that's its flow direction. And we're just going to tell it to go with the opposite of the flow. And that's actually all we need. We don't need any restarts, because it's going to walk twice here, hit the wall, in which will jump to thud, and it'll say walk op flow, which will then go south. And it'll hit this wall, and it'll jump to thud again, and then op flow will change it right back to going north. So we can save here, watch him pace around a little bit, make sure we did this right. He's great. Go back into KevEdit and we decide we're going to make all of these work for talking to Raymond, so I'm going to make them all objects. Actually, this is a good time to bring up the shortcut again. If you hit Control plus O, every object will turn into a smiley face, so you can see and know for a fact that, hey, you've got an object here. And that's not just a blink wall array or whatever. And simply just hitting another key will shut that mode off. So we're going to actually interact with Raymond from a counter. So raise ray guns. And it's perfectly fine to put spaces and special characters and things up here, but that will prevent you from sending messages to them properly. In our case, this is just a shopkeeper. We're not doing anything fancy with it, so it doesn't matter. We can just use this nice little title. So to end its code, the player will touch the object, interacts. I'm getting ahead of myself there, spoiling the next command. So, actually, we'll do that player convention where the white text means they're the one speaking. Let's just quickly see, what does that look like? Now we only set the bottom one to have code. I didn't bind these other objects, so I have to talk down here. Hello, what can I do for you? I'd like... And we can also see that the object's name appears at the top of the message window. If a message is one line, it's the flashing text on the bottom. If it's more than one line, it's this big blue thing, which means the name will be displayed. So now we want to offer the player some choices, and we do this with hyperlinks, just like on the internet. And you do those with an exclamation point, and then we're going to type a label. We'll say ammo 5, a semicolon to delineate the end of that, and then we'll just type our text. 5 ammo, 1 gem. You can use whatever currency you like, whatever amounts you want for ammo. That's definitely something where balance is really important. You want the player to spend their money. You don't want them to have to hoard it. A lot of games will do something like 10 ammo. Actually, let's do 5 ammo, 2 gems, and then a lot of games will do 10 ammo, 3 gems. And then you're getting a better deal if you buy in bulk, which, you know, makes sense, true to real life. But then you're also running into the issue where a player who only has 2 gems might not even buy any ammo whatsoever, because they're going to feel like it's not worth it if they're not getting that best deal. And I put an extra space here, you don't need that. Can just run them right in like this. I honestly think you're probably better off just making your pricing consistent. And you also don't want the player to have to buy a ton of ammo or whatever else in tiny increments. So we'll do 25, which should be 2 for 5, so it should be 10 gems. And another thing commonly done is we've got an empty label here, which means that if the player selects this line, it won't jump to anything, which is the same as closing the window on anything else. It's more of a visual thing. Some games will have pop-ups that consist entirely of hyperlinks, and that's the way to close them. So it's kind of superficial here, but I do want to show it off that it is a thing you can do. We want to stop our code. And these here are going to be our labels. So we're going to have ammo 5. And then we get to introduce our give and take commands. Now you gotta be smart about this. A lot of not well-coded games will give you the ammo and then try and take the money. which lets you just buy things for free if you don't have enough. Or alternatively, not set up a fail state for if the player doesn't have enough money. So we're going to actually take their money first with the take command. We're going to say, what are we going to take? We're going to take gems. And how many gems are we going to take? Or we're going to take 2. And then we're going to give them the ammo, which is just give ammo 5. And this current setup, take gems 2, will take away 2 gems, but if the player does not have 2 gems, it won't do anything. And it'll just go on to the next line and they'll get their stuff for free. So we add a sort of a fail state label like I was showing off with try. You can name the label whatever you want. Common convention, I think Town uses this, which uses TP. Actually no, Town uses too poor, and a lot of games saw that and just went with TP. And it's just what I've always ended up using because of it. Like that, give them 5 ammo. Here's your ammo, acknowledge it, and stop executing code. So now we should be able to buy some ammo if we have them. Well, actually, right now we don't have a fail state. Let's do the fail state. So TP, we make them play an angry sound effect, something low pitched. BBC, that sounds angry, right? That sounds pretty awful in KevEdit. Let's. Good enough. Add some rests. I have enough gems. And again, stop code executing, because we're going to have more code under here. So this should be enough to let us buy 5 ammo if we have the money. And for debugging purposes, let's give them some money. I broke the wall. Switch over, pick up the money. Let's see. I would like. You can see that the exclamation point here adds in spacing. It does this sort of indented layout, which is why that extra space is not necessary. And all you have to do is hit enter as usual, closes the message box. If the player highlights a line, you can see up top it says press enter to select this. And we'll buy some ammo. There we go. Now we got 7 gems, 5 ammo. 10 ammo, 5 gems. Let's just go for broke. 3 gems left, 1 gem left. So now we shouldn't be able to buy any ammo. We should instead jump to that label, the TP label, because we're too poor. There we go. Works great. And we can also, just to make sure, there's nothing that has the blank label, also closes out like any other line. So let's bind the rest of this counter before I forget. Oh, actually, see, now we're running into it. We can't bind because it's got this big fancy name that can't be used otherwise. We can't do bind raise ray guns. If we do that, it's just not going to work at all, I believe. It might pop up an error. Let's see. Oh, that does work? What? Maybe that's only in send. I'm under the impression that that should not have worked. So I'm learning something here, apparently. Really? Spaces and an apostrophe. It worked. I'm not gonna... Whatever. What I was going to say is that this is when we would want to use KevEdit's ability to pre-bind things. Scroll on down, you can see it lists It lists things. This also will let you bind to objects that don't have names, so that's at least something. Raise ray guns. We'll copy that into my pattern buffer with insert. Press space. They're all blank, but you can see they're all bound to raise ray guns. Dang it, I did it again. Let's go back to KevEdit. You can see, there, they're all bound to raise ray guns. Except for this one, which isn't bound automatically, it's using the code to do it. And then this one, which is the original. So as long as I'm in here, let's code those other two. 10 ammo for 4 gems. So I'm going to take 4 gems. And what did I say? Here's your ammo. I'll just copy and paste that. Here's your ammo. That should do it. Now, we don't need this last one because it's the end of the object, so we'll save our space. Now let's actually see, how big is this board right now? I'll open up that board info with I. So 2.4 kilobytes. We got plenty of room to spare right now. But with that, we've got our very first store. So next up, let's do the health store, which I'm going to do slightly more differently. Let's try do some counters again. Make these ones gray. This time I won't have the object pacing about. I'll just put them. Now let's make the store ran by one of those robots. Adjust that cycle to 1. Let's see if they're robot in. I don't know if an inn is the best thematic for restoring health in a game that takes place on Mars. No, it's not. Rejuvenation chamber. That's what we're gonna do. So we're just doing the same thing again here for the most part. I'm going to make this a little pricier because I'm not going to just give the player health, we're going to reset their health. I really want to put these spaces here. I think that's just like the non-ZZT programmer in me really not liking how this looks. So I'm going to do things a little differently. Actually, I better remember to take the gems. Our label down here. Take gems 10. TP. And I'm not going to actually have this object be responsible for that. We're going to do a little health restore thing kind of like the one if any of you were here for the Small Spaces live stream, where we step into something and then that will reset the health. And so to do that, we're going to have to make a little rejuvenation chamber, and we're going to make that door open up when you give the robot the money. I'm going to say, so we're going to learn about the send command. Send, simple enough. We specify the object's name, which we haven't made it yet, but we'll call it chamber. And then we just attach what label to jump to, open. And here, handle our player not having enough money. There is no R and does not compute. Okay. Let me get rid of these debug gems here. There's a player here. And this room is a little crowded, so I'm going to actually just real quick, this object here, just give gems 29. And this code will just execute immediately because there's no end command. It's just going to immediately give the player some gems and then do nothing else ever again. I'm going to restructure this room a little bit because it's kind of crowded. Don't want the debug object in it. I just want to slide this over. Let's see, let's make a chamber. We'll do objects. Where these sort of half-block characters will come in handy. If there's any rhyme or reason to how these things are organized, I don't know what it is. You just kind of gotta learn your way around it. But characters that I want. This one's single pointing up and double pointing left and right. So the opposite of that. Oh, there it is. Right next to it. And do that again. There was something else I wanted to do with this, but I don't have room like this. I need to continue to reshape this. Yeah, just shrink this building. That's the real secret. Fill out our corners. And the last one. There we go. Looking better. Yeah, well, there's actually some room to spare. That's a rejuvenation chamber, alright. It needs a door. Should be extra sturdy. And we already said this is going to be called we said we were just going to call this chamber, if I can spell it correctly. Now we could give it nice animations. I'm not going to, because I just want to move things along here. As with before. Actually, this one the player doesn't touch, so we don't need to lock it. So it'll open up, it'll go left and up. The player will be free to enter. And eventually they will reach this spot. What I'm going to do... I didn't make these bottom ones objects. I'm going to make these all objects. Make sure they're cycle 1. I'm going to learn a couple of commands here. So first and foremost, we want the door to close. So we're going to have the center object here. We're going to do a loop. And this object probably doesn't actually need a name, but just for, in case it does, I'll give it something quick. And we want it to have a custom label for our loop, which will be loop. And we want to check when the player is next to this. And for that, we're going to need the extremely useful if command. If we pop open the help file, if does a lot of different things. It can check for custom flags, it can check if the player is aligned, it can check if the player is next to it, it can check if it's just blocked, check if the player is energized, it can check if certain things exist on the board. It does a lot. In our case, all we care about is the player standing next to this tile? And all we need for that is just to check if it's in contact with contact. And if it is, then we're going to specify a label for it to jump to, which will be our recharge. And then we just want it to loop. Now, we've been using restart, and actually I'm realizing we can just use restart again, but let's just show off a loop for the sake of doing a proper loop without using restart, which is simple enough. Well, simple enough. There's like 4 different ways to do it. There's another thing like go and west and all that stuff where there's much shorter ways of doing this. So we're going to send self loop. And that way it'll just jump right back to here. But again, that's a lot. You can shorten this. You can just say send loop, and it'll act on itself instead. If that's still too long, the default sort of command is send, and you can just say loop. All of these are the exact same thing. Let's, for the sake of leaving them in as reference, let's learn how to do a comment in ZZT, which is just an apostrophe. So now we've got some commented code here, and we're just going to loop. Now, one thing about infinite loops like this is, I know it's not really an issue now with Zeta. If you're playing on something a bit older, or if you're using DOSBox, this can actually start making things run kind of slow. And the reason for that is it checks if the player's in contact, and then it jumps to loop. And then it checks if the player's in contact, and it jumps into loop. And it's doing this over and over again in a single cycle. So it'll actually check if the player is next to it. I believe it's 32 times. Well, no, because this counts as a command as well. But it's going to be checking many, many times over if the player is there every single cycle. That's excessive, and we don't need that. We only need to check once. It's either the player's either there or they're not. So all we have to do is just add an idle command, and that'll automatically end the cycle, as it were. It'll say, okay, I'm going to wait for the rest of the cycle. And then on the next cycle, it'll go to loop, jump back here, check for contacts, hit the idle, and idle again. And you'll get significantly better performance if somebody is using DOSBox in your game if you do that. But what do we do if we're actually in contact? And then we're going to jump over to recharge. And so we need to drain the player's health and set it to 100. So let's actually bust out the comments. You can tell nobody comments their code in ZZT because it took me this long to be like, oh yeah, we should learn how to use comments. Since there's not a lot of memory, excessive commenting can actually take up quite a bit of space. Let's see. Well, let's just say set player's health to 0 and then to 100. Now, if ZZT-OOP was not bad, there would probably be something like set health 100 or set health 0, set health 100. You can't do that. ZZT does not let you just set a counter to a value. Kinda sucks. With health, there's a convenient shortcut called the endgame command, which instantly causes a game over. That probably sounds bad, seeing as how we're supposed to heal the player. But, conveniently, that sets their health instantly to 0, regardless of what it was. And then, just like our ammo shop, we're going to give some health back, 100. And then, that's technically it. Let's actually see if what we've got here so far is working. How much do I... Yeah, I have our debug object here giving us some gems. We should be able to walk in here, stand on this tile, and have our health adjusted. Our health is already 100. Let's add our little debug object here. Take health 31. Now let's see. So now we're injured and have money. Talk to the robot. Set our health to 100. Our chamber door has opened thanks to the send command. Carefully walk in. And there we go. We got 100 health. And our game did not end. That's good. And the reason that our game did not end is because death is only checked for when the player gets to act. So when that object ended the game, it then set the health to 0 and then immediately gave 100 health and finished. And then the player got their turn to act and it saw it had 100 health, and thus the game is not over. That works because we weren't ending a cycle. If we did, like we add this here to end our cycle. If we did this, you would get a game over, because this would stop execution, the player would get a chance to act, and then it would give 100 health. If you're doing a ton of commands, even if they don't end the cycle, it is possible to hit that limit of 32, which I think it is, and then hit endgame, or have endgame on the very last cycle. Possible thing. It's awkward, it's weird, it's not really going to happen. You're safe, you're almost always safe to just use endgame. But you know what, just for the sake of things, this is the other way you would do it. You would just start taking health. Now, a lot of older games just kind of picked big numbers and worked their way down, like take health 5,000s, take health 4,000s. Kind of awkward and not efficient. What you want to do is start thinking about your health in binary. So that's the maximum possible. Dang it. I'm doing that a lot this stream. So you want to... And I still didn't even hit the button. But if you want to actually really arbitrarily set health or any other counter, you want to just start taking powers of 2. I don't know what this power of 2 is offhand. But blah blah blah, take health 64, take health 32, take health 16. You can see that this is not as good as using endgame. But that will also set the player's health to 0. And if you're doing this with something other than health, you don't get the luxury of endgame. If you're trying to set their ammo to 0, you gotta do it this way. If you're doing it with torches, let's actually go over. There's not a lot of counters in ZZT. It's all that sidebar stuff. Let's actually go to Zeta for that. All that stuff on the side. We've got our health, we've got ammo, torches, gems, score, and time, which is kind of a weird one. We're not even gonna deal with giving and taking time, because it's a strange one until you get the right mindset for it. But that's all you get. You get 5, 6 really counters to work with. One of them kills you if it gets set to 0 and the player gets to act. It's tough, but you can do quite a lot regardless. But we're going to do it the easy way. We're just going to do our end game, take our health. We had a couple of other things. Our door is still open, so we're going to tell that door to shut. What did I call it? A chamber. So we're going to add a close southeast. So, actually this is our first time sending, or no, it's not. We've sent other objects. But like what I was showing with send up here, you don't need the send. You can send chamber, close, or you can just say chamber, close. Easy as that. So now we'll get our door to shut, and we want to wait just a moment because we want to give the door time to shut, so it looks like that's an important part of the process. And we know that the chamber, actually this one's running at cycle 3, so it's kind of a slow door. So we're going to actually add a couple of idles. Now since it's at cycle 3 and this thing's at cycle 1, this is equal to 1 idle for the chamber door, or 1 movement. So that's going to let it move once. This will let it move twice. But technically we don't know how many cycles until that door gets to act, because it only gets to act every 3 cycles. So there might be a bit of a delay. So I'm just going to add 1 more for good measure. Actually, I'm sorry, 2 more for good measure. So it's going to take a little longer. But now we shouldn't get healed until that door is definitely shut. So let's go see what that looks like. Kind of bland, but it does what it needs to do. Granted, we are trapped in here forever, so we need to actually open the door again when we're done. So let's do that first and foremost. Player's been rejuvenated. We'll send that chamber to open again. Same way that the shopkeeper did here. Chamber open. Send chamber open. It's all the same. So now the player will be free to go. Only issue there is that now the door is going to be left hanging open. We don't want them to get free heals. We need the door to close 1 more time when the player gets out. So we need to find some way to detect that the player is left here. So let's see. There's actually quite a few options we have here. Now right now this door is bound to the original door. We could give it just a copy of that code and also say, whenever this door opens or shuts, have it send a message to here. We can just have it act like these other doors and close on its own, but then we do run the risk of the player getting trapped inside. What I'm going to go with, we've seen contacts. We could have an object check when the player is outside. We're going to go with the aligned commands. I'm going to use this object since it's conveniently here. I can't type secretly doing stuff objects. And we're going to do another loop. We'll define our label. We'll set up our loop. Actually, one other little shortcut. You can combine commands, sort of, on one line. This is valid. This will idle properly, and then it will loop properly. It depends on what the commands are. Basically, I think it has to be a direction, actually. You can't do something like that. But you can stack them off of movement commands, which is convenient. So now we get our loop. And we're going to use that if command again. But this time we're not going to check if the player is in contact with this object, because unless they're cheating, they never will be. We're going to just check if the player is lined up. Actually, we're going to need to do a little bit more than that, but we'll start with just that for now. And that gets done with, we go back to our list of if commands, it goes with if aligned. Except aligned has two L's in ZZT, because Tim Sweeney didn't know how to spell. Like, that's very, very important. If you do this, that's not going to work. Gotta have that extra L. Does not have to be a capital L, but I just kind of want to highlight it. If aligned, shut door. And actually, yeah, did we do? Where was our if? Okay, yeah, I did just type the label directly. You can type any command here. You can say, like that, command endgame, and if the player gets lined up with this object, the game will instantly end. You can do the long way. You can do send self. Okay. You can do send okay. But by default, again, it wants things to be the send command. So you can just say if aligns, okay. Okay. Oh, actually, I'm overthinking what I needed to do here. We don't want it to loop immediately, and we don't want to have this giant name. I'm just going to call it chamber check. And we're going to want it to just stop immediately. We're going to want it to be very responsive, so we'll adjust it to cycle 1 here. Alternatively, you can do that right here. Okay, go back to our chamber object here. Once we've been rejuvenated, now we tell this object the chamber check. We'll send a message to tell it to start looping. And I'm probably should be giving these more descriptive labels than loop. It's just such a force of habit with me for ZZT to name my main loop loop. Like as is often the case, you do as you've been taught, and I've just seen loops named loop a lot. I don't want the counter, I want the object behind the counter. If aligned, okay. And actually, because I don't want the player getting shoved in, And slide this over one more tile. Cut it and paste it. Move it here. Blind OK. We'll have to wait just a moment. And then tell chamber to close. And I think we should have this all clear. Let's do this whole process from walking outside. Oh man, it's been like almost 2 hours and we've got 2 buildings and some fish, and we are not getting as much done tonight as I was hoping, but that's okay. This is code. I mean, it's going to be a complicated thing. Ooh, definitely broke something. I don't know where that came from. What did that? Something is very broken. What did I do? OS. Okay, so that's being sent. Something was closed. I'm actually kind of at a loss. I have no idea. Something is like running to the middle of code because it's displaying. It's robot. Yeah, it's got to be something that's running immediately. Let's see. Let's just break this, comment that out, and we'll see if this is the object that's acting up for some weird reason. Oh, I again was not in the right window. I just commented out this loop, so it won't be able to receive a message. Okay. So that's definitely it. I wonder if it's because I capitalized my extra L. That would be bizarre. But everything here looks legit. I hope that did it. Okay. That's the mall's text directory. Something is horribly broken. And I think I know. I think it might be related to all like the pre-bound objects we did. Because that's nothing. And the fact that I'm getting like different messages every time I run. Let's do this. Let's just grab this section, copy it. What? Paste it. And let's see if it's something screwy with this. I've never seen this, by the way. This is absolutely bizarre for even weird ZZT errors. So far, so good. Oh, see? Well, this object is supposed to be bound to a door that no longer exists. So you gotta cheat our way through there, but other than that, turn here, our health gets reset, our door opens, and the door shuts again. Technically speaking, there's probably still time for the player to rush right back in. So we could, well, we'll get to that later. That at least did something. I'm assuming it's related to like our pre-bound objects. We didn't really do any of those. We did like... just be safe. Raymond. Get rid of those pre-bounds. I don't think that should be doing it though, but something screwy is going on. This looks okay. Is everything working? Mall is not exploding, our fish are swimming, our doors are opening. These aren't working. Buy the ammo. Can be acknowledged. Enter the chamber. Strange. So I guess it was something related to that. I don't usually use KevEdit's ability to pre-bind things, but I've never heard of it not working. I don't know why these don't work. The case shouldn't matter. I know that this is lowercase and this is capital. That shouldn't make a difference. ZZT shouldn't care about that. I don't know. Well, let's see. What do we got? Got this, got that. Oh, I know what I want to do. We're gonna make this little rejuvenation chamber somewhat more flashy. So we're gonna do 12. So we're gonna actually make a little sort of animation here. So I'll tell these adjacent objects. So I'm going to send some objects, these ones here, they're going to be next to the player. I'm going to make them do a thing. I'm going to call them effect, and I'm going to call the label start. Sometimes it's tempting to say, you know, effect go to start doing the thing, but as we saw, go is a command, and that's going to break. So don't do that. So start. Tell it to not do anything by default, and set up our start label. And for this one, make it share the code. So our player is going to be here. We're going to learn a couple of commands here. First and foremost will be the put command, which will let you put whatever tile you want wherever you want it, as long as it's with the direction. So we're going to pick our direction. We're going to tell it to put to the north. We're going to say, well, what do we want to put? I don't know, what do we want to put? I'm going to put a solid wall. Everything in ZZT, almost, has a name that can be referenced in ZZT-OOP. So solid will be a solid wall. They don't quite match up. If you look at the list of things here, they mostly do. Solid is solid, normal is a normal wall. These are generally the same names. Sliders are slightly different. They don't have spaces. Blink walls doesn't have a space. There's a whole lot. But we're just going to put north a solid. And we can specify a color. This will make it yellow. You don't have to. If you don't specify a color, depending on what you're trying to put, it might use just a default color that's set in ZZT, or it might use the color of whatever's in the tile already. In our case, it's just an empty. But for this, we're just going to put north a solid. do this. Stagger the animation a bit with some idles. Actually, as I was saying, we don't need the yellows after this because it's going to have a yellow solid. It's going to try to put a normal wall on top of the yellow solid, and it's just going to use that yellow color since it's already there. And bizarrely, even though we've seen in the terrain menu water how it's got its own specific colors, for whatever reason, which is honestly just like a coding error, I'm sure, you can actually put colored water, which works out quite conveniently. As far as colors go, we've seen this giant list many a time, and this horrible half that's just blinking and you don't like using, and then background colors, which are special colors, and dark colors, which are special colors. The only colors that have names that you can reference in ZZT-OOP are just these 7 here. Blue, green, cyan, red, purple, yellow, and white. If you want to use a special color with something like the put commands, you gotta do some more intense work, because it's not as easy as you would hope. But we're just going to use yellow. And hopefully... oh, we should actually clear that out also. And at the very end, put north an empty wall. So we should have some visual element here now. That's not too bad. It was a little bit staggered though. One on the left and the right were not quite acting in sync, which is strange because they are both cycle 1. But I'm okay with how that looked. It's not bad. Probably a good time to put in some music as well. Do something high-pitched. I again forgot to switch windows. I just added a bunch of play commands with each step of the graphics for the animation. And that's going to look like this, and sound like this. Don't like how that sounded, but you get the idea. But let's see. That's our 2-hour mark. How many commands did we get through here? Let's pop open that list. Language reference. So we're going to scroll from the very top. We've seen $signs for white center text. We've seen the @ sign for giving an object a name. Pound for a command. A slash for going. Question mark for trying. Colon for labels. The accent mark there for comments. Exclamation point for hyperlinks. The only thing we didn't see is the external hyperlink. We can do that next week. That doesn't happen. Doesn't come into play very often. Scroll on through all this. We've only used touch of the pre-made. Oh no, we've used thud as well. So we've shut off shooting on this board, or at least I did. So we're not going to see any shot necessarily, at least coming from the player. Objects can still shoot. Haven't seen bombed or energize. We've done a couple of directions. At first we were doing, well, we've used north, south, east, west in our doors. We've idled. Haven't had anything chase the player with seek. We've done flow with our Raymond guy who's pacing back and forth. We've seen some basic randomness with the fish. That's not too bad. We haven't done flags. We haven't done if with flags. We've done aligned. We've done contact. We haven't done blocked or energized or any. So there's still plenty to go. Haven't done become. We've done bind. Haven't done change. We've done char. Haven't done set or clear. Done cycle. Haven't done die. And end game. I think we got through a decent amount. Locks we've done. But I mean, ideally, as you can see, I hope, pretty much all ZZT-OOP is you place your object on the board, you have it execute its code, and you send and receive messages to other objects, and that interaction, the communication between them, is how you do your graphical effects, your sounds, your doors opening and closing. And hopefully, none of that came off as too complicated for anybody. Anybody has any last minute questions for now, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. Also, I think I know why the code got horribly mangled. The issue with that is we had our stat list here with Control S, all this junk. At some point when I was rearranging buildings, copying or cutting and pasting kind of rearranged the stat order, which is fine, but also means the things that we pre-bound were pointing to the wrong spot. That's something to watch out for if you're pre-binding objects, that order won't be updated automatically. So it kind of was pointing to God knows what, and that's why random things were happening. But it looks like that's it. We got 2 stores and some fish and a mall directory. So tune in next week, we will make a ZZT hot topic. Thank you all for watching. If something like that happens, yeah, let me cover that. If something like that happens, it would be a good idea to remove the prebind and re-add it. That is probably all you should have to do. This stat order ends up being pretty important in the end. It's just something to watch out for if you're going to mess around with that feature. Honestly, unless you're pressed for space, or it's incredibly important for a pre-bound object to act immediately, just use binds. What do we got here? 3.7 kilobytes. Is that bigger than the robot factory? Yeah, our robot factory that has no objects here. This is still a larger board because it's so much busier. We're definitely gonna up that size a bit. Also, yeah, absolutely. I want to see your malls on Neptune or wherever else. Let me actually make that tweet real quick. I don't think I hit the screenshot button once. Whoops. But there we go. There's our link. If any of you want to share your works in progress, show off whatever strange code you wrote that hopefully doesn't cause horrible corrupting errors like mine did. Or maybe your doors animate better than mine do. But I look forward to seeing what everybody's been working on. And we'll be back again next week to hopefully finish up the mall.